السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Brothers and sisters, so in this chapter we'll discuss the formation of contract or akad, means what makes a contract in Sharia. So we'll talk about the definition, the types, related concepts, and also the when a contract is invalid. Okay, so the definition of akad, contract. So literally, the word akad means to tighten, to tie something. So it is quite close to the technical meaning, which akad means, according to the Majalla al-Ahkam al-Adliya, what the parties bind themselves and undertake to do with reference to a particular matter. It is composed of the combination of offer and acceptance. So it is tying, okay, where two parties, the buyer or seller, they undertake to do something in a particular matter, and there should be offer and acceptance. So it is like the combination or tying the offer with the acceptance. So it is called a contract or akad. So it is done by two parties. There will be offer and acceptance, and the akad, the consequences will be done, or the akad is executed on the spot. So that is called akad. So when we know akad, in order to be clear on this concept, we need to know some other concepts in the Sharia which are really close to the concept of akad. The one is wa'ad, promise. So wa'ad or promise in the Sharia, it is a declaration by one person to do something in the future. So wa'ad is done by one party. So here wa'ad is just an offer and something will be done in the future, but it does not have any acceptance, and also it does not require the acceptance of another person. So this is called the wa'ad. So when we know wa'ad, there is another called mu'awadah, mutual promise. So mutual promise is two person, they promise to do something in the future. So here mu'awadah also is different from akad, contract, because mu'awadah, two people, they promise to do something in the future, while in akad is executed now. So that's why in akad, the offer and acceptance is they use a past or present tense. So muawada is in the future, and as also muawada is not always compulsory. If somebody promises something, it is not compulsory in the Sharia to fulfill it, unless if the promisee he incurs any kind of loss or difficulty. So that's the difference between wa'ad, muawada, and akad. And then we have two other concepts like tasarruf, which may be related to akad, but it is different. It is actually a broad term. Tasarruf means any kind of action that is considered in the Sharia. For example, the anger, it is an action. Okay, prayer, it is an action. So any kind of action, it may not. So akad is maybe part of tasarruf action. And iltizam is another concept which means obligation. Okay, so so this obligation also different from akad, or it might be a general term than akad, because of course in akad there is obligation, but the iltizam is any kind of obligation. It can be maybe because of akad, or it can be because of somebody's own declaration, like for example nazar, somebody takes an oath that he will do something. So that is called nazar, and it is obligatory for him, but this is not a contract. So these are the four concepts which might be similar to akad, but they are different from akad. So again, the akad is something that is offer and acceptance. There are two parties, okay, and the consequence of the akad is the akad is concluded on the spot. Okay, so the permissibility of the contract, whether is it permissible in the Sharia? Of course, the akad is the very basic principle of fiqh muamalat. Okay, every concept, every contract, every financial products actually they go back to the basic concept of al akad, and Al Quran said in okay, or you believe awfu bil uqud, fulfill all your obligation. So here the based on this verse, all the akad is so Quran said we us to fulfill means that akad is something which is permissible. And then another hadith is say al muslimuna ala shurutihim. The Muslims they are bound by their conditions, except conditions to make lawful what is unlawful and to make unlawful what is lawful. So based on this hadith, any conditions that the Muslims they make, they are accepted in the Sharia, except the condition to make something halal but it is haram, or to make something halal which is haram. These type of conditions are not allowed in the Sharia. But other than that, any condition the Muslims they make among each other, it is allowed in the Sharia. And then it is I would say the ijma or the consensus of the scholars that the contracts they are permissible in the Sharia. There is no all the scholars they agreed there is no okay not much differences. However, whether all types of contracts are allowed in the Sharia or not, of course scholars they have differences of opinion, this contract is allowed or not. But the very basic of the concept of al okay of contract al akad, it is allowed. So we can see the jurist approach in fiqh muamalat. Actually, this is generally all the akad. So we have found the Hanafi school of thought. The Hanbali school of thought is the most flexible, while a Shafi'i, Hanafi, and Maliki they take the middle position, while the Jahiri school is the strict. So according to the Jahiri school, all the contracts are invalid except there is a text in the Quran or Sunnah that validates it. Okay, so he takes the strict position, where the Hanbali school it takes the opposite. Okay, according to them, all the contracts are accepted or valid in the Sharia except those which are prohibited in the text of the Quran or Sunnah. So this is actually the most accepted opinion among the scholars, and the majority of the scholars they accepted it. However, the Hanafi, Shafi'i, and Maliki school they took the middle path. They quite close to the Hanbali school. They allow all the contracts, but they take some exceptions based on qiyas. Means they do not generally allow all the contracts, but they also take exception based on qiyas or the usul sharia. So they make some exceptions. They do not generally allow all the contracts like the Hanbali school. Okay, so the types of contracts. So basically, the contracts can be, or akad can be divided into two, which is bilateral. Another one is unilateral. So bilateral contract is actually our concern, and most of the contracts in Islamic banking are bilateral. Where unilateral contract, which is executed by one person, it doesn't require the acceptance of another person, like we can say unilateral contract like wasiya, hiba, gift. So if I want to give something as a gift to my friend, so it's unilateral. It doesn't require the other person to accept it. Even the wasiya, if I want to make a will for my children, it doesn't require the acceptance of my children. So that is unilateral. Okay, so that's the example, hiba, wasiya, or tanazul. While the bilateral contracts are mutual contracts, it is which requires both uh, offer and acceptance, and maybe there are some exchange of items in the bilateral contract. So to be clear, unilateral contract is effected by one party, while bilateral contract is effected by two parties. Okay, and then unilateral contract, it doesn't require consent of the recipient, while the bilateral, it requires the consent. And then Sharia principle related to the pillar of the contract are relaxed in unilateral. So when we practice unilateral, then like the concept of garar is flexible, and some other elements are flexible. That's why when we structure Islamic insurance or takaful, okay, so we use the concept of hibah, okay, which is an unilateral contract. So insurance is prohibited in the Sharia because it is a albay selling contract where if somebody purchases insurance, he purchases something, but what he pays for, the reward is there is uncertainty there, so it is not allowed in the Sharia. However, when we use the takaful, where the person who participates in takaful, he just gives a donation, he gives hibah. So whether he gets any reward from that, it doesn't matter, because it is a unilateral contract. So that's why takaful is allowed in the Sharia. Okay, so bilateral contract, in bilateral contract, like I'll buy, sell, or murabaha, the pillars, the concept of garar, all are strictly followed. Okay, so bilateral contract, okay, actually the Sharia scholars, they have divided the contracts based on different perspectives. So if you see the bilateral contract, they can be divided into different categories, okay, and this actually not really very rigid, means they sometimes they are really we can say overlapping, but just for understanding, there are six types which are very famous. This is the classification. Like first, the contract of exchange, muawadat, where there is a exchange, like say buying and selling. There is a exchange, murabaha, musawama. So means there is a mutual exchange of subject matters. Okay, and then contract of security, tawfiqat, like pledge, where there is a security items, an item is kept as security or pledge, okay, for example arrahnu, okay. And number three, contracts of partnership, okay, so here we can get mudaraba, musharaka, musaqa, all are contract of partnerships. There is an element of partnership. And then the contract of self custody, so example is al-wadi'ah, safekeeping. Number five, contracts pertaining to the utilization of usufruct or manfa'a, where the selling of service, for example, ijara or ijara muntahiya bit tamlik, all this. And sixth is the contracts pertaining to do a work, like wakal, means it is a contract to appoint somebody for to do a work. For example, wakala or juala. Okay, juala is paying somebody if he can perform, he can achieve something. So these are the types of the contracts based on their purposes. Okay, of course, these divisions are not very rigid, but these divisions are just for us to understand the purposes of the contracts, and to categorize them according to their aim. Okay, so now what are the pillars of the contract? What is the very basic Sharia ruling related to any contract? What is the pillars? According to the Hanafi scholars, there are only two pillars: offer and acceptance. So if somebody gives an offer and somebody says accepted it, it is allowed in the Sharia. So if the husband says, a husband offers, okay, a man offers to a woman to get married, and the women accepts it, it is allowed in according to Hanafi scholars, even though the mahar is not decided. Okay, even that's according to the Hanafi scholars. However, according to the majority of the scholars, actually there are six pillars of the contracts. There are offer and ijab, same we call the expression of the contract. There are subject matter, or we call mahallul akad, or the object of the contract, which is price and the commodity, thaman and muthman. And third is the contracting parties, al-aqidain, okay, the offerer, al-mujib, and the acceptor, al-qabil. So there are six elements. So the coming weeks we'll be talking about these three. All these pillars of the contract or akad. So why there are differences between Hanafi and the majority of the scholars? Because according to the Hanafi scholars, the pillar or rukun should be something which is the underlying thing, part of the contract. But according to the majority of the scholars, the rukun or pillar, it actually should be something which is essential, regardless whether they are underlying part of it or not. If something external, it doesn't matter. Something essential for the contract should be the pillar. Okay, so what is the consequence? What are the consequences of this difference? Of these differences are is that okay? The majority of the scholars, okay, they divide the contract into two. Either the contract is valid or void or invalid, but sahih and batil. So if a contract fulfills all the pillars, then it is valid. If the contract does not fulfill any of these pillars, then it is in a void or batin. But according to the Hanafi scholars, they consider ijab and qabul are the pillars, and others like the price and others are the shurut or the conditions of the contract. So according to them, a contract is valid when all the conditions and also all the pillars are fulfilled. Means all the six items there are fulfilled, so it is valid. Now, uh, if a contract there is offer and acceptance, but maybe the akidain, the contractors, they have some defect, they have some deficiency in terms of their maybe legal age, okay, to do the contract, or maybe there is no fixation of price or delivery of the goods. So in that case, according to the Hanafi scholars, there is another stage of the contract is called voidable, which is facit. So facit means a contract is defected, it is pending. So if the contracting parties they just fix that part, then the contract will be valid. They don't need to redo or execute the contract again. So that is voidable or facit. So if there is any problem in the conditions like the price or others, then the contract is voidable, facit, and it can be fixed. If the contracting parties, if they just fix the price, for example, or if they fix the delivery, for example, which was not fixed earlier, so the contract is will be valid afterwards. Okay, and according to the Hanafi, the final one is the void or batil. If a contract, if there is a violation in the pillars, offer and acceptance, then it is void or batil. So as we can see, actually the majority of the scholars actually they accept the Hanafi scholars opinion, and in the field, especially in the field of Muamalat, okay, and they think that this is more reasonable, because when there is a little problem in a contract, it is better to fix it rather than we need to execute it again from the beginning. Maybe this is not accepted in the ibadah. Okay, there is no such thing as voidable facit, because okay, but in the muamalat, yeah, we can divide into three, where a contract can be fixed. For example, if a contract has a riba, so if according to the Hanafi, let's say if there is a loan transaction and there was the element of riba there, so according to Hanafi, if they eliminate the riba part, so the contract is valid. But according to the majority of the scholars, the contract is not valid. They have to execute the contract again. Okay, so which is sometimes can be difficult. And if we see the maqasid, the objective of the sharia, okay, so we can see the Hanafi scholars opinion would be preferred in this case. So that's all on this topic. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.